nothing has changed. Same apartment, same job, same routine, same people, same prayers you've been praying for longer than you want to admit. From the outside, nothing is different. From the outside, you look exactly like you did a year ago. But something inside you has shifted, and you can't explain it. Things that used to satisfy you don't anymore. A restlessness has moved in that wasn't there before. You keep feeling like you're supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, becoming someone you haven't become yet, and you don't know where that feeling is coming from or what to do with it. Most people dismiss this, call it a phase, call it midlife crisis or anxiety or ingratitude. They try to shake it off and get back to normal. But what if this feeling isn't random? What if the inside, shifting before the outside changes, is exactly how God works, and these internal signs are the earliest evidence that He's moving you into something new? Here are the signs. And if more than one of these is happening to you right now, something is coming, even if nothing looks different yet. Before we get into the signs, I need to establish something important, because it changes everything about how you interpret what's happening to you. In the Bible, when God was about to shift someone into a new season, He almost never started with the external circumstances. He started on the inside. Think about how the seasons work in nature. The very first signs of autumn don't happen on the trees. They happen in the soil, in the root system, in the temperature of the air, weeks before a single leaf changes color. If you only watch the leaves, you'll be surprised by fall every single time. But if you learn to read the earlier signals, you can feel the season turning long before it's visible. God works the same way. Before Abraham left Ur, there was an internal stirring, a divine call that happened in his spirit before a single bag was packed. Before Esther walked into the king's court and changed the fate of her people, there were 3 days of internal preparation, fasting, prayer, a quiet fortifying of something inside. Before Paul launched the missionary journeys that would plant churches across the ancient world, there were 3 days of blindness in Damascus, no external activity at all, just God doing something in the dark. The shift starts on the inside, always. So when you feel something changing internally, and your circumstances haven't caught up yet, don't dismiss it. That gap between the internal shift and the external change, that's not confusion. That might be the most significant spiritual space you've ever been in. Here are 6 signs that God is using it. Sign number 1. The things that used to fill you have stopped working. Not in a bad way. Nothing broke, nothing went wrong. They just stopped being enough. The job you were grateful for feels hollow. The friendships that used to energize you now feel like they're missing something. The version of life you worked hard to build fits differently than it used to, like clothes that don't quite sit right anymore, even though nothing about them changed. This is deeply disorienting, because when you try to explain it, it sounds like ingratitude. It sounds like a problem with you, not with the season. But look at what happened to the disciples before Jesus found them. Peter, Andrew, James, John, they were fishermen, successful ones. They knew their trade, they had their boats, they had their nets and their routines and a life that made sense. And then Jesus walked up to the shoreline and said 4 words, "Follow me." And they left, immediately. Left the boats, left the nets, left the life. Why would stable, working men do that? Because something in them recognized that what they had, as good as it was no longer the assignment. Here's the pattern. When God is preparing to move you into something new, He often first makes the old thing insufficient. Not terrible, not wrong, just not enough anymore. And this is actually an act of grace. If the old thing still felt completely satisfying, you'd never leave it. You'd stay comfortable in a season God has already finished. So He quietly removes the fullness from it. The way you might pack up a room you're about to leave, the furniture is still there, but the feeling of home has already moved somewhere else. So if you're sitting in a life that used to feel like exactly what you wanted, and now it feels somehow incomplete and nothing external has changed, pay attention. That's not a malfunction. That might be the very first sign. Sign number 2. Desires and interests are showing up that you can't fully explain. They arrive quietly. A topic you've never cared about suddenly absorbs your attention. A direction you never considered keeps surfacing in conversations, in things you read, in random thoughts in the middle of ordinary days. A question that won't leave you alone. What would it look like if I actually pursued that? The natural instinct is to dismiss this as distraction, especially if it doesn't make obvious sense given where you are right now. It's easy to say, that's not practical, that's not realistic, that's not who I am. But consider what happened with Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king of Persia. It was a prestigious position, good life, secure. And then someone told him about the broken walls of Jerusalem, a problem that had nothing to do with his job, his responsibilities, or his immediate life. It was not his problem, but it became his consuming passion. He couldn't shake it. He wept. He fasted. He couldn't eat. And that desire, which appeared out of nowhere and made no practical sense, became the exact assignment God had been preparing him for. Here's the theological principle underneath this. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." Most people read that as a transaction, delight in God, get what you want. But the deeper reading is this. When you're walking close to God, He places in your heart the desires He wants you to carry. He authors them. The desire is the clue to the calling. So when a new desire shows up uninvited and refuses to leave, especially one that connects to something bigger than your own comfort or advancement, don't be too quick to call it distraction. It might be direction. Sign number 3. Scripture that you've read before is hitting you completely differently. You've read this passage before, maybe dozens of times. You could probably quote parts of it. And then one morning you read it again, and something in it lands like it never has before. It reaches past the familiar and strikes something specific, something that feels personal in a way you can't quite explain. Theologians have a word for this distinction. In Greek, there are 2 words for the Word of God, Logos and Rhema. Logos is the written word unchanging, consistent, the same for everyone. Rhema is when the written word becomes a living word spoken by God into a specific moment, for a specific person, with specific meaning for right now. What you're experiencing when a familiar passage suddenly hits differently, that's Rhema. That's not you reading a book. That's God speaking into your current moment through text that's been sitting there, waiting for you to be in this exact season to receive it. And here's what's significant. When God is shifting you into a new season, He often prepares you through His Word before the season actually arrives. He gives you the theology before He gives you the circumstance. He builds the internal framework first. So if a passage keeps finding you, if the same verse appears in 3 different places this week, if a chapter you've skipped for years suddenly won't let you go, that's not coincidence. That's preparation. God is building something in you through His Word before He reveals what it's for. Sign number 4. Your prayer life has shifted in a way you didn't plan. Maybe you're praying more. Or maybe it's not about frequency, it's about depth. The things you used to pray about feel somehow resolved, even if nothing has visibly changed. And new things have started surfacing, things you're not sure how to even articulate yet, words that feel like they're still forming. Or maybe it's the opposite. Prayer has become strangely quiet. Not cold, not distant, but quiet in a way that feels like waiting rather than abandonment. Both are significant. When Israel was in the wilderness, God had them stop, set up camp, stay in one place. The cloud didn't move, and they waited sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, until it moved again. The waiting wasn't inactivity. It was the posture of a people completely dependent on a signal they couldn't manufacture. And here's what you need to understand about that wilderness prayer. It wasn't silence from God. It was God changing the channel. He was about to speak differently, not through the familiar voice, but through the cloud by day and the fire by night. And they had to be still enough to notice when it moved. When God is transitioning you, He often transitions how He speaks to you first. The prayer rhythm changes. The focus shifts. Things that used to feel urgent in prayer feel somehow settled. A new weight begins to gather around different things. Not because He's gone quiet, because He's getting ready to say something new, and He needs you in a different posture to receive it. If your prayer life feels like it's in a strange in-between place right now, not cold, but not what it was, don't interpret that as spiritual failure. It might be spiritual repositioning. Sign number 5. Your relationships are changing in ways that feel out of your control. Some people are drifting without a clear reason. Others are suddenly appearing people you wouldn't have encountered a year ago. Conversations that used to feel central are starting to feel peripheral. And conversations with people you barely knew are starting to feel significant. This one is painful, especially when the people drifting are ones you didn't want to lose. But here's what the Bible shows over and over. God repositions your relationships before He repositions your season. He shifts the inner circle before He shifts the external circumstances, because the season you're going into requires a different kind of community than the season you're leaving. When David was hiding from Saul in the caves, a group of men found him. 400 men, described as distressed, in debt, and discontented. Not impressive, not what you'd choose, but those men became the core of his army. The people who couldn't seem to fit anywhere became the foundation of a kingdom. The new relationships that feel a little random right now, people who showed up unexpectedly, connections that don't yet make obvious sense, pay attention. Some of them may be your cave of Adullam, people placed in your life for the season you're walking into, not the one you're walking out of. And the ones drifting, grieve them honestly. But don't chase what God is releasing. Sometimes the drift is protection for you or for them. Sometimes it's simply the natural reconfiguration of a life that's changing shape. Sign number 6. There's a quiet knowing underneath the uncertainty, a settled sense that something is about to change. It's hard to describe. It's not hope exactly, though it has the quality of hope. It's not certainty, because the circumstances don't support certainty. It's something quieter and deeper than both, a sense almost physical in its quality that you are not where you're going to be, that something is on the way. Elijah heard it as a still small voice, or more literally in the Hebrew, a sound of a gentle blowing. He had just come through enormous noise, wind, earthquake, fire, and God wasn't in any of it. The word for the new season came in the smallest, quietest sound. The knowing you're carrying right now might be that. Too small to announce, too real to dismiss. Here's how to test it. This settled knowing, does it produce anxious striving, or does it produce patient waiting? If it makes you desperate to force something to happen, to manufacture movement, to make the season shift on your timetable, that's anxiety. Not knowing. But if it makes you more faithful in the ordinary things, more attentive to the present moment, more anchored rather than more frantic, that's the peace that passes understanding. That's the knowing that comes from God. Paul wrote from a prison cell, "I have learned, in whatever state I am, to be content." Not passive, Paul was still praying, still writing, still trusting, but content, doing the thing in front of him while carrying the certainty that God was moving. That combination of faithfulness in the present and trust in what's coming, that's what the settled knowing actually produces. I want to be honest with you about something, because this video won't serve you well if I'm not. These signs are real, but they can also be misread. Not every restlessness is from God. Not every new desire is a divine calling. Not every relationship that drifts is God releasing it, and not every person who shows up is a divine appointment. Here's the test that matters. The shifts God initiates don't make you self-focused. They make you others-focused. The new season God is moving you into is never fundamentally about your comfort, your significance, or your story. Every season shift in the Bible, Joseph, Esther, Nehemiah, Paul, had a purpose that extended beyond the person going through it. They were being positioned to serve, to sacrifice, to carry something for other people. So as you read these signs in your own life, ask yourself this honestly. Is what's stirring in me leading me toward greater love, greater service, greater dependence on God? Or is it leading me toward a version of life that's mostly about my own fulfillment? That's the difference between a God-initiated season shift and restlessness that's just restlessness. The other thing I want to say, the timing is not yours to control. The signs showing up does not mean the new season is arriving tomorrow. Abraham felt the stirring and waited years. Joseph had the dream at 17 and walked into the fulfillment at 30. The gap between the signal and the change is often where the most important formation happens. The signs are not a schedule. They're an invitation to faithfulness. So what do you do while you're in this in-between place? 3 things. First, name what you're sensing. Not to announce it to everyone, but to be honest with God about it. Write it down. Pray it specifically. God, I sense that you are shifting something. I don't know what it is or when it's coming, but I'm paying attention. That act of honest acknowledgement is itself a form of cooperation with what He's doing. Second, tend what's in front of you. The transition from one season to another almost always runs through faithful execution of the current one. Elisha was plowing the field well when the mantle landed on him. He wasn't sitting around waiting for his destiny to find him. He was being faithful with what he had. Whatever you're in right now, do it well. The bridge to the next season is built from faithfulness in this one. Third, stay close to the voice. When the season is shifting, you need direct access to the one who's doing the shifting. Not more opinions from people, not more information, more of Him. More prayer, more word, more silence. Let the signs that are showing up drive you deeper into relationship with God, not further into speculation about what's coming. The very first verse of Genesis chapter 1 says that the earth was formless and empty, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, before there was light, before there was land, before there was anything visible at all. The Spirit was already hovering, already moving, already preparing. This is who God is. He moves before anything appears. He works before there is anything to point to. He prepares in the formless and the dark, in the invisible space before the first word of a new season is spoken. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was. The nothing you're sitting in right now may not be nothing. It may be the hovering the Spirit already present, already moving, already preparing the conditions for something that hasn't been spoken into existence yet. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to be able to see it. You just have to trust that the same God who spoke the world out of darkness is not finished speaking. Your new season is already being prepared. You can't see it yet, but something in you already knows it's coming.